Hey guys, it's me again, Miss Birds, back with another tutorial. This is going to be how to set up the coloring, or how to color in or fill in the shapes for your Jasper Johns project. Now this is one of the examples that I showed you guys in class. This was an example that I did last semester, and I used color on this one. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to color it if you have colored pencil or marker that you want to use, and then also how to do the alternative, which is just creating different values using pencil if you just have pencil and paper. You will notice that I went through and created my letters on top of each other, right? So I have my B, I have an I have an R, and I pretty much stopped there. What I also did to kind of create more of an interesting composition is I kind of just drew in some circles. It kind of broke up into a lot smaller shapes over here, which was ultimately a little bit more interesting, and it really just adds to the composition, right? And when we're talking about composition, we're talking about where things are placed or arranged on a piece of paper. So if I only had my letters here and I didn't really have this, it would kind of just look almost like a Roman numeral 3, kind of. And I feel like adding in the shapes just kind of gives it a little bit of an extra oomph and kind of just takes up some of this extra space that I would have had on the side of my project. So if you'd like, when you're done drawing your letters or your numbers or even your symbols, right? We said you could use symbols. If you'd like to kind of add in a couple extra shapes, like some circles, just to kind of break up some of that composition, make it a little bit more interesting, that is completely fine. Okay, now much to what we've already learned before, right, when we were doing this project, is that we stuck with kind of like 3 letters or stayed around 3 to 4 letters, numbers, symbols. And that's kind of the same rule of thumb that you want to do when you're coloring it. Okay, so you'll notice that I've only used my primary colors. I have red, yellow, and blue, and I'm only using those 3. It's important not to use the whole rainbow, right, because then it'll kind of just look like a mess. We want to make sure that we're sticking with about 3 to 4 colors. That's going to give us some repetition, right? I have red here, but I also have red here, I have red here. And really when we use the same colors and we break them up into different spaces, it allows our eye to really move around the project, right? I see yellow up here, but then I see yellow here, but then I see yellow here, but I see yellow here and here and here, right? I'm directing my eye to move around the project and to see the whole project, okay? So that's why we want to make sure that we're sticking with the same colors and kind of just moving them around. Now, when we have our project, it's broken up into smaller shapes. So anytime you see a shape, that's when you need to color, okay? As soon as we cross over to a different shape, we need to choose a different color, okay? Different shape, different color. You'll notice that, and I don't think I did it on this one. I can see one, but if you can't see it, I'm not going to point it out. But mostly, all of the colors are separated from each other, right? I don't have yellow back to back. I don't have red back to back, right? I have it kind of diagonally across, but the shapes that are touching the red are yellow and blue, right? So it gives it that nice transition. So you want to make sure that you're alternating your colors, right? I don't want to do yellow here and then yellow here, because that's going to create what looks like all one shape. And we really want to separate all of the shapes differently, because that's going to allow us to see it as more of an abstract piece instead of a whole, right? Instead of just letters and numbers sitting on top of each other, it really looks very abstract because we have lots of colors that are creating and dividing into these different shapes. Okay, so this is something similar that you can do if you want to try doing it in color. If you have markers or colored pencils available, this is something that it might turn out to look like. If you'd like, you can even practice some shading if you have colored pencils, right? So you can see I did a darker outline on the outside, and then I'm slowly getting lighter and lighter to the center, right? Creating that value shading. Remember, we talked about value is the lightness and darkness of a color. So I have that red really dark on the outside, and then I have it lighter as I'm going into the inside. Now, as a counter to this, if you do not have colored pencils or markers at home, what you may want to do is just use pencil and create different values. So this is my example that we've been working from, that I showed you from our last tutorial of how to just draw and set it up. You can see that I've gone through and I've kind of outlined everything in black, all of my shapes. I just think it makes it look nicer, stands out a little bit more, right? So that's good. So I've already started coloring up in this section, and I'm going to show you how I've kind of divided those colors, much like I did in the other example, right? I'm not putting the same value next to each other. For this example, I'm only working with a pencil, and I am applying pressure, so pushing down really, really hard on my pencil to get that really dark value, and then not pushing down hard on my pencil, kind of just letting the pencil glide across to get this lighter gray. I'm also going to leave some of the boxes blank. So this box was left blank on purpose. That way I have a really white box, a light gray box, and then a dark gray box. Again, if you'd like to do the same technique where you are going darker on the outside and lighter on the inside with your values, you may do that as well too. But you can see that I've already started separating it, right? So I have a really dark box, I have a light gray box, a dark gray box, or a dark gray box, light gray box, white box, dark gray. So right here, I'm gonna do another light gray box. So in order to do that, and I'm actually just gonna flip my paper a little bit because I kind of started already going through and creating that lighter value going side to side this way, right, back and forth horizontal, and I'm going to do that on this side too. So again, I'm just kind of going through and lightly putting in some value with my pencil, making sure that I'm staying within the shape, right? So once I see another line, I want to make sure that my coloring stays inside here and doesn't move here, because this is a different shape, right? So we're only filling in the shapes. We're no longer looking at it as letters, designs, symbols, numbers, right? We're going through and we are just focusing on the individual shapes. Give our mind more of an abstract point of view. And I'm going to make sure that I have the entire shape filled in. So I don't want to leave any white spots unless it is a shape that I want to leave completely the white of the paper. So anytime we have that black line, right, separating, that means that it's going to be a different shape. So that means it'll need a different value. So I'm not pushing down hard on my pencil. I'm kind of just letting the pencil glide over the paper. Just nice and soft, just enough to put down a little bit of graphite to show that light gray, but not enough to create a really dark value. So just nice and easy, very light, not even really putting pressure on my pencil. And I've created that gray value. Now, I have a white box here, so I don't want to keep this box white because it's right next to it. So I'm going to do that really dark gray, really, really dark gray. And in order to create that really dark gray, I'm going to push down and create a lot of pressure with my pencil. So I'm going to push down a little bit harder on my pencil to get that nice dark gray. Now, if you're working with a pencil, you want to make sure that you have not only an eraser handy, but also a pencil sharpener, right? The sharper you keep your pencil, the better. But of course, as you're going through this process, if you're pushing down really hard on your pencil, you're going to lose the point of your pencil, right? It's going to get pretty dull pretty fast. So having a sharpener available right next to you is going to be your best bet. Now I can see that I still have some white spaces, right? So in order to block out some of those white spaces, I was coloring vertically. Well, now I can switch my paper around and I can go the opposite direction. In order to not, right, get a bunch of graphite on the bottom of my hand, what you can do is take an extra piece of paper, like I'm going to take this blue paper, I'm going to put it down underneath my hand so my hand isn't rubbing on that graphite. So if you have an extra piece of paper, I would suggest doing that if you're working with the pencil. You can also do it if you're working with marker too, because marker sometimes will stain your hand if it's still wet and you put your hand on top of it. So I'm just going through in the opposite direction, making sure that I clean up all of the spots that I've missed. Going in the opposite direction is going to make sure that we are closing in on any white spots, and it's also going to ensure that the value is going to be a lot darker. Okay. So now you can see I have a dark spot, a light gray spot, a white spot, light gray, white, dark, light gray, dark, and dark, right? So I can either do this white, which I'm probably going to, no, actually I'm going to do this light gray, right? Because this piece is matching up to the light gray. So I need to leave this piece white, right? Because it's got a really dark gray here, a light gray here. So I kind of need to leave this space white. So then I'm going to do this space light gray. That way I can leave this space white. And we're just alternating, right? Looking at what shapes we have, where we can fill in the right color. Now, some of you may have thought, well, why didn't you do the light gray here and leave this white, right? Because this is really dark, so we could have done white here. But if I left this white and this needed to be white, then this would just be all one white section, right? So before you start coloring, really make sure that you're looking at the design, right? Look at the design and go one right next to the other, right? One right next to the other. Don't start on one side and then start on the opposite side, because you may find out that once you go and meet in the middle, that you're gonna have colors or values that are next to each other, right? And we don't really want that either. So you wanna make sure that you are being very strategic in where you are placing your values so that you don't have any that are matching right next to each other. And again, if you're choosing to do this digitally, which some of you may decide you want to if you are so inclined, you have to make sure that you're playing by the same rule, right? Whichever values you're using, you want to make sure that you don't have them sitting next to each other. They should be different. Okay, I can color in the opposite direction just to clean up the white spots, but also making sure, again, this is a light gray shape. So I don't want to go through and add any really dark values. I want to keep it light. Now, I'm not going to color the entire project on camera, but you can kind of get the idea of what we're seeing here, right? So eventually, all of this will be colored in with some type of value, besides my white spaces, of course, but it will be alternating between that really dark value, that light gray, and that white. So eventually, even though this is in color, it will have the same effect as the original. Okay, so again, you can choose to do in color. Your color could be colored pencil, like my example, or it could be marker, or you can also do it in graphite, right, which is just regular pencil.